All right, just started the recording. Today we're just going to continue with the front end. We're going to talk about creating a Flask and Dash front end, which involves just a lot more files, and I'll walk y'all through that. Quick announcement before we begin with regards to our capstone presentations. I did mention that we're going to actually do, instead of 2 days in a row of presentations, Monday, Tuesday, I've moved Tuesday's presentation to the week after. And so I've been talking with most of you in class to just get a sense of which day would be a better presentation day. So actually it's right now a good half-half for those of you who I've confirmed with which day you're presenting. Also, if you've booked a review slot next week, I assume that you're presenting on this coming Monday. So yeah, if you want to just confirm that with me, or if you have a preference of which week you present, let me know. But preferably your project review comes after your presentation. So it kind of determines, I don't know, when you want to have your review kind of determines when you have your presentation. I know some people just want to graduate sooner and some people want a little bit more time on your project. So yeah, know that that is a little bit flexible, and just let me know if you have any preferences or yeah, thoughts or questions about that. Cool, so right now it is half-half. I think like 10 presentations in a day is actually a good amount. So yeah, where we're at currently is pretty good. All right then, so I already have my screen shared. Today I'm just gonna talk through Flask with Dash real quick. To get started, just to remember how we run this, if anyone has already tried downloading this. To run this particular app, you can see that the files are kind of differently organized. So this is just within the Flask with Dash folder. You can see out here, there's a run.py, and running this runs everything. So that's why I do Python run.py to run this app. If you call this something different, run that different file. I will say that this structure actually comes from Dash's documentation for doing a dashboard with Flask. So in case you're curious as to why some of the things are set up the way they are, for those, I guess, more like specific questions, I can't really answer other than like, this is just the way they want you to do it. But there are several things that I can point to. So let's bring this Atom file up just to see what's in each of these files that you gotta have. So first you have run.py, which you can see here. Run.py is kind of like a standalone on the first layer of the file structure. And run.py has almost nothing in it. You're importing the app, which is your Dash app, and then you're just running the server. That's all run.py has. But you're importing the app from this thing called Dash package. And if we take a look at Dash package is an entire folder here. These notes are just actually notes that notes regarding what I'm about to talk about. So if anyone wants like written version of that, it's all in notes. So in Dash package, this is where all the stuff is. This is where all the files for running and creating your dashboard Flask app live. So within Dash package, there's actually quite a few things that we should talk about. So first, the init. If you don't have an init file, it will not run. So the init.py, this is an automatically generated one, so feel free to delete that. But in the init, you spin up your Flask server. So because we're going to be technically running our Dash, not by itself, but we're actually going to put our Dash on Flask, the server that's going to be run is going to be a Flask server. And Flask, if you remember, is the one that I had my machine learning model on, that classifier. So we're spinning up a Flask server, but within our Flask server, there are kind of like two separate things going on. There is our dashboard, and then there's whatever other part of our Flask server is. So for this example, it is just another text classifier. So on Flask, this just allows you to debug. And by debug, what this does is basically while it's running, if you hit any like errors or warnings, they will actually pop up in your Git bash or in your terminal. So this is how you spin up the Dash part of your Flask. So you configure your app. Your Dash has, I don't know, no, I don't think you can edit the name, but the main thing that you want to make sure or keep note of is that the base path name of your dashboard is going to be at whatever you want it to be. So the fact that here I have it as /dash, if I want to access my dashboard, whatever this URL is, and of course right now it's just a local server, I'll just put /dash, and that's where my dashboard lives. This suppress callback exceptions is something to do with within your Dash app when you have callbacks. If you have, it helps with debugging it, because sometimes if your dashboard doesn't spin up correctly, instead of nothing showing up, it'll actually show you the traceback errors of your of if there was an error in your Python code when setting up your dashboard. And then at the bottom, you can see I'm importing routes. So this is the init file. I would say if you are using my template, don't change it because I have messed around with this a good bit and this is what works. So since we are importing routes from here, let me talk about the routes file. So the routes file basically determines all of the different pages on your app. So yes, we have the Dash app and you can see that I'm returning the app here. So here I have /dash. Here I actually have /model, and this is actually exactly the same as what was set up in just the Flask app. So I'll talk about it again in a little bit. But basically here, you can pretty much have as many pages as you want in your Flask app. So just as an example, what I have here is /hello. And if I just go to /hello and there's nothing on there, it's just returning a string. And if I do /hello, it just says, oh, hello, Sidebase. Sidebase is the name of one of my old cohorts. So this is for them. They decided to name themselves Sidebase. But anyways, yeah, if you want to do multiple pages and render multiple HTML templates, you would define all the different pages in the routes. So this is what the routes are for. Something that is kind of finicky about importing things in a Flask /dash app is the way that you import your different files. So you can see here, everything is within Dash package already, but when I'm importing stuff, I still have to do from dash package.dashboard import or dash package.functions import. And that's because where things are being run, they're actually being run from the run file. So because what I'm running, when I do run.py, it's from out here. And then run.py is actually calling on everything else. Whenever you're importing within Dash package, you still have to tell it to go into Dash package because it sort of sees you at the place where run.py is. Typically, if you're running into this error, it will tell you that the file is not found or the module is not found, and then you just have to add that. Yeah, if you forget to do that, it's usually pretty easy to figure out. All right, so here I have my dashboard. Here I have just a random page, and you can add as much as you want. Some people have used this to put like an about me page or like about the project page. Maybe put like your markdown info if you like, stuff like that. And then here again, exactly the same as what I had for just the Flask app. Something else to talk about here that is specific to Dash with Flask is we haven't talked about setting up the dashboard and where that is. When we had just a dashboard, everything was just in one Python file, which I mean could technically work here as well. You would just have to like import things here and there, and it does get a little bit complicated. So I actually have everything for my dashboard in a dashboard file. So here in the dashboard file is where I have this app.layout. And right now I have it very, very simple. If you remember the dash, it's literally just one graph at the moment. You can, of course, make this as complicated as you need it to be. But yeah, for now, it's just one graph. This is just to show that I also have all of my other functions defined in a functions file. So these are just things that will render different parts of this. So for example, title and let's see, title and say hello. These are functions that are being used in my dashboard. So you can see here, under the H1, I have the say hello function, which is what is up here. And then I have like the title which is here as well, I think. And then all of these, the 2x, the half, these are all functions that I imported from the functions file, just to show that you can, pull things from other places. If your dashboard is way more complicated than this, and typically it would be, you can define all of your different DCCs before the layout, same way as I did for Jupyter Dash. So yeah, at this point, these are all the things with regards to like the dashboard part. Any questions as of now? Okay, cool. So other than the dashboard, this might be repetitive from yesterday, but I'll just go over briefly again. Aside from the dashboard, the rest of the Flask app is the same as when you're doing it just as a Flask app. So you can see here in my routes, I have the /model page. And if I go to /model, it'll spin up my model. So this is my other text classifier that I had. Same idea with the get and post requests. So in the get requests, I am rendering this HTML, which is like the home page. And then, rendering this HTML, taking in the input here, and I'll show you that in a bit as well. And then once you run it, you do the post request so that you can classify the text. So really quickly, actually what I'll show is the templates. So the templates, exactly the same. Again, I want to point to the get request. So in classifier here, just remember that this is the form where it's taking in the information. The method is post because you're going to look for the post request to grab the data and put into the model for later. But what you have to remember here is that the name here is name. So I have to keep track of the name. And then if I go back into, which one was it? Routes, you can see that I'm getting the name. So that's how it's getting the text to throw into the classification model. So here, we already talked about this yesterday as well, depending on what the prediction results are. And again, this prediction function will spit out this classify text function will spit out either a 0 or 1, and then I just render different HTMLs based on what the result is. I will say the HTML templates that I have here, very, very similar to the HTML templates that I had yesterday. So I'm not going to go over it too much, but everything is just in the body, top to bottom. You can see here I have an image, some text, and then a link to just do the classification again. I guess something else to mention that took me a while to figure out. For rendering just images, because I know the last project I rendered a GIF instead, which was like an embedded GIF from Giphy. If you want to just have static images, for some reason, you got to put it into a static folder, and then it'll pull from there. But yeah, I think those are the main things to look out for. For my functions, most of the functions are my NLP pre-processing and modeling functions, so nothing new there. In terms of pickles, I have my model, my TF-IDF vectorizers pickled as well. And yeah, basically everything I need for my functions to run. I would say the most tricky part about doing a Flask with Dash app is setting up the file architecture. So yeah, again, feel free to use this template. But yeah, since a lot of this is kind of similar to before, I feel like we can end here. I do imagine that if and when you all are working on your front ends, you'll have a lot of questions as that is going on. So yeah, feel free to just let me know, because I find debugging this a lot more fun. But yeah, as of now, before I start talking about pushing to Heroku, any questions? All right, so the 3 different kinds of front ends that we've talked about so far are all hosted locally as of now. In order to get your, actually, before I talk about that, let me talk about something else. There is another library that actually most students end up turning to anyways, and it's called Streamlit. I think it's streamlit.io, I believe that is there. There we go. So Streamlit is a pretty new library. It came out after I graduated from the program, so I haven't actually looked into it, but a lot of students say that it's very easy to implement. You would have to think about the same things, pickling all of your models, creating pipelines to get your data into the way that you need it to be, or getting raw data into the form that you need it to be. But setting it up is actually, from what I hear, pretty simple. This doesn't, I see that this doesn't look very simple, but in setting this up, a lot of my students have been able to put all of their project into a Streamlit app within a week. So I don't think it's too hard. To be honest, I haven't tried it myself, but there are a good number of Medium articles. I'm going to link to a couple of them in a Slack message in a little bit. Actually, I'll also put it on the Capstones guideline so that doesn't get lost in Slack. But yeah, Streamlit is another alternative to doing a front end. I would say doing Streamlit is easier. I would say it's newer and it's kind of its own thing. And I will say the downside is you don't get the experience of working with Dash or Flask, which are actually libraries that some companies do use. So yeah, pick your poison of like what you wanna, what you would rather work on. I will say, yeah, Streamlit is a lot quicker to set up from student experiences. Let's see. So all three of the front ends that I talked about, and this as well, Streamlit actually does work with Heroku too. And so Heroku is just a platform that allows you to, I think it's called Heroku app. Is that exactly what it's called? Oh, it's just Heroku. Okay, so Heroku.com, it allows you to deploy a bunch of different apps. So it allows you to deploy Dash, Flask, and also Streamlit. I've only really done it with Flask apps, but I know it can be done using Dash and also on Streamlit. I actually have students that have put their models onto Streamlit. But in going from your local environment to putting something on the internet, there are a couple things that you have to know. So I will be sending out a bunch of resources after this. I'll put them on the Capstone guidelines as well as probably link it to Slack. But one of the main things that you're going to have to set up is a separate virtual environment. And so, yes, we actually have all set up virtual environments. We all set up the Learn environment during our first week here, but we didn't really have the opportunity to talk about what environments are for. So if we are familiar with our Learn environment, the Learn environment basically just tells us what packages and what specific versions to pip install on our machines. It's good for a Learn environment because for students who are just getting started, you can just make sure that all of the packages will work well with each other, so you don't have to worry about like specific dependencies. Also, some of the code that we had in our curriculum works with specific versions. So that's a big reason why we have Learn environment for Flatiron students. It's actually very typical for companies and also people who are working on their more professional projects to create a separate environment for whatever project you're working on. So when you're creating a new environment, and so if you're creating a new environment on Conda, I'm not going to do it right now, but actually, can I do it right now? Conda, is it end list? Okay, I got to look it up. But basically, Conda list environments, Conda env list. There we go. So you can see here on my computer, hopefully, I don't think I have too many environments because I personally don't use it that much. All right, so basically here I have the Learn environment and I have this for another project. The upside of using environments, and when you first create an environment, actually nothing is installed in it. You can actually tell Conda when you create an environment, what version of Python specifically you want to use. And that honestly, if you know that you want to use a library that, for example, doesn't support anything past Python 2, there are some like really old libraries that are not updated for Python 3 even today. So if you know that you need to use Python 2, for example, you can just create an environment that is Python 2, so it doesn't mess with your other libraries that you already have installed on your computer. The main goal of using environments for specific projects is such that if you're working on a project now, like today, and you have a bunch of packages, and imagine like, let's say 5 years from now, you want to go back to your code and Python is now in like Python, I don't know, 4 or 5, a lot of your Python 3 syntax might not run successfully. the benefit of having an environment is that you can actually spin up your old environment during the Python 3 days, and you'll basically have all the packages in the same form as it was when you were doing your project. So you don't have to worry about, all right, uninstalling this version, reinstalling an older version, that kind of stuff. So having an environment just allows you to work with specific versions or specific combinations of packages. Another pro is that if you have an environment and you're starting your project in your environment, you only have the libraries that you need to use. So you don't have, let's say in your entire project, you don't use Surprise. You're not even doing a recommendation engine. You don't even need Surprise. So your project won't get bogged down with having to look for or having to account for just other libraries they don't end up using. So one of the resources I'm going to send out is how to create a virtual environment. And for things like Heroku, why you need to have a virtual environment is because Heroku needs to know what packages your project needs so that it can put it up on their web server. So I'm going to send out a link on how to create and save your environment. Basically, what it will look like, I actually do have an example here, desktop Flask, and it is within the Flask app, I think. So if I open this up, what you eventually want to do is come up with a requirements.txt. So this is really small now, but this requirements.txt is kind of similar to your environments. Like if you remember, to set up your environment, you had to do like use like a environment.yaml file or I think it was windows.yaml for some of you. But anyways, this is kind of the same thing. You just need some sort of text file that tells you exactly what libraries you need to use. You don't want to have redundant libraries. You don't want to have libraries that your project isn't using, so Heroku doesn't have to download those libraries for you. So creating something like this is one of the first steps that you need to do before you put your project on the internet. And yeah, I'll send out a resource on how to do that. So this is the main thing. I think it really does depend on like where you're going to end up working, but it's good to have some experience with like understanding the purpose of an environment. For a long time I'd like heard about what an environment was and like roughly knew how to use it, but it wasn't until I like made this myself that it became clear to me like how it worked and what the benefits of it was. So yeah, creating an environment and basically all of the requirements that your project needs, that is something that you have to do in order to host your app on Heroku. Other things that you're going to need to create, a proc file, which I don't think this has anything in there. Yeah. When you're setting things up on Heroku, I'll actually send out a bunch of walkthroughs. I'm not going to walk through the process right now, but you're basically going to have to create a bunch of other files that will tell Heroku how to run your app. So this is just one of them. Proc file is one of them. This VENV stands for virtual environment. These are just all my virtual environment files. So you can see here that these are actually automatically created in the walkthrough I'll send out. So yeah, in order to get your app from local to Heroku, you just have to go through a few steps, create a few files, as well as a virtual environment, so that Heroku knows how to run your app. It might be slightly different depending on what kind of front end you want to put on Heroku, but I'll look for examples of each, so and I'll send them out. I know I have examples for doing it with Dash, and I have examples for doing it with Flask, and Flask with Dash works the same way. So yeah, I know I actually have students who have written how they did Streamlit to Heroku, so I'll look for that as well. But yeah, I think that's about it from me regarding front ends today. Does anyone have any like questions? Doesn't have to be about this. It can be about pretty much anything at this point. All right then. We only have 2 more days of study groups left. I don't really have additional information to share. I think where some of your projects are, some of you are actually doing things that are starting to get beyond what I know. So that's incredible. And I'm very, very excited for that. But yeah, I don't really have much to share. I think the last couple of study groups, we're going to do just questions, unless anyone has any ideas of what you want to hear or talk about. Yeah, yeah, it'll probably just be questions. Our last study groups, we can have our very last Feelings Friday. We'll do that. And yeah, and then we get into capstone reviews and presentations. So that's very exciting, very bittersweet. But yeah, I don't have anything else for you all today. Any last call for questions? Cool. As usual, feel free to let me know if you're running into anything today or for the rest of the week. And yeah, cool. In that case, everyone have a good rest of your day. Feel free to Slack me if there's anything going on, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. All right, bye everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.